Rob McKnight just asked me backstage a really good question. Is it going to be 15 minutes? No, we're breaking format. We're going for 30 because there's lots of stories and I want to hear them all. I've got a feeling I'm going to be the only person on the call that didn't work with him or have never met him. So I'm really keen to kind of get some perspectives. All right. YouTube is live. Excellent. Okay. So we'll get going. I'm just going to take the mandatory sip of hot drink. 1 second. Excellent. All right. Welcome along to this special live recording of the Quarter Hour in tribute to the one and only Jamie Dunn. I never got the chance to work with Jamie. I never actually even met him, despite working in Queensland radio for 4 years. We were sort of in and around each other, but I know plenty of people coming on this morning have got some great stories, have interviewed him, and we're going to get to some of those. So if you've got any comments about Jamie at all, drop them in the chat. We'll put them on the screen as well. But I got a message overnight from Ronnie Stanton, who's currently in Canada, long-time Queenslander. It's going to be a big Queensland fest today, everyone, just so you know. And I thought I'd just start with what Ronnie said about Jamie Dunn to kick us off. Here we go.
Start with Jamie Dunn, honestly. Like, just the most creative, passionate, driven, funny, warm guy that you could ever be thrilled to work with, let alone call a friend. He was an inspiration to me. He was one of the reasons I wanted to do radio when I grew up. And he's, just an awesome guy. He'll be missed.
Definitely be missed. And one person who got a chance to talk to him recently was Rob McKnight of McKnight Tonight. Rob's going to come on shortly, but I thought I'd play you a little clip from that interview, which you can find in full on his YouTube channel, of course, McKnight Tonight. So go and have a look after we chat this morning. But this is a question that Rob asked him about Agro, because I was always fascinated, where does the man and the character merge? Where are they happy to be famous, one not the other? But Rob asked a brilliant question, and obviously there's some video here of Jamie. So have a listen to Rob and Jamie, and then we'll chat to Rob live after this. Here we go.
Being famous for your own achievements under your own name, or the character you created in Agro?
Well, let me think about the answer to that. Probably Agro was an accident, and my career was a bit of an accident. And I just have stumbled into whatever success I've had, I've stumbled into, kind of, and there's not one particular thing. I mean, Agro, I just would turn up and do him. I just lay down and old Agro had a great attitude. And I was surrounded by some very clever people, Gibbo and Crikey from Cartoon Connection days, and the girls I worked with, Anne-Marie was a really, really good host, Jill, all of those. And it's interesting that I think I was telling you I was in the Lamb ad, Sam Kekovich.
Yeah.
That's out this week, and Agro gets just about 2 seconds in the end of that. And it's really strange to see a puppet that you did up next to Steve Irwin and Bob Hawke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's very strange because they've portrayed Agro as like the whole ad is about Australia and Australianism, and that we have hardware stores that sell more sausages than hardware, and really Australian ad. And right in the end, there's a little 2 second flash of Agro. I didn't have to record it. They just used some vision of Agro and some vision of Steve Irwin, who, now that's a real Australian icon. And, I sit here going, my God, how did that happen?
Oh, it's lovely to even just hear his voice again. Rob McKnight from McKnight Tonight. Does it kind of give you a little bit of goosebumps knowing that was, 2 months ago?
Yeah, it's really crazy because Jamie had nothing to promote, but I just reached out to him because I know he's always a good chat. I worked with him a few times on Studio 10. We loved him. We were all big fans. We'd get him on for any reason. We did a 60 Years of TV special, which he came down for. And the thing about Agro is it's actually owned by Channel 7. So every time he used it in public, he had to get permission, and Channel 7 graciously allowed him to be on Channel 10, on Studio 10. to do Agro and show Agro being Agro, and Jamie doing him at the same time. But what I always loved about him, look, there are people who are real friends with him and they're going to speak. And I spoke to Ranger Stacey, and but I can talk from a working relationship. Now, I only worked with him a few times, but when I was filling in for Sophie Formica on 4BC, I reached out to him to say, would you be up for an interview? And without hesitation, he did it. This time he did it. And he always knew who I was. And I didn't really expect that because, I was a behind the scenes guy, but he'd followed my career and he was just really lovely and willing to do anything for anyone. And he didn't care that he had nothing to promote. I didn't care that he had nothing to promote. We just wanted to chat as people who love the industry. And it's really interesting about that Lamb ad because that was almost like the final validation for him. He was talking about that on air and off air, and he was really, really chuffed. And I think you can hear it there. He was so chuffed that, Agro was next to Steve Irwin and considered in the same context. And I just think that was beautiful. In actual fact, I'm a little disappointed today because while the Courier Mail did a big thing on their website yesterday, it's not on the front page. Now, having said that, half the front page of the Courier Mail, as newspapers are these days, is an ad. So yeah. There wasn't a lot of room. And the Courier Mail did do a lovely tribute, like I think it was about page 3. But what got me was that, like Sydney, because he wasn't a Sydney guy, didn't think this was as big a story because he's considered Brisbane. And I don't understand that. Agro had such an impact on our lives. I can tell you people have been going and watching that YouTube interview. They've just found it. And I'm a little disappointed in the coverage, but there's been a lot of coverage about his death, as rightly should be. I just think there should be more.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm Adelaide born, right? And I remember his Cartoon Connection coming into Adelaide on 7 was my exposure to him. I remember distinctly going into a Channel 7 shop. Remember when they had those?
Yes.
Channel 7 shop and buying an Agro puppet. And I remember how much that made me feel because I think early days, I'm trying to think of an equivalent now. It's probably like a Bluey where the adults get it and the kids get it. And
Bluey would be the only thing, I think.
Yeah, the cheekiness of it, like the cheekiness and the, he's going to go there and almost like the danger. And God, he was funny. He was so funny. So when you interviewed him, and there's a lovely piece at the end. I'll encourage people to go to your YouTube channel and watch it all the way through because right at the end you ask him a very poignant question. Did you get the sense that he was in that sort of reflective mood in that stage of his life?
He was certainly happy to be talking about it because I played his song to him that he recorded in 1970, Jamie Come Home, and he talked me through that. He even talked about his time with Wendy Harmer, and I thought she was gracious today. She put out a statement, and she didn't go overboard because the two didn't get on, and he talks about that. But she said, look, we didn't agree politically, but he was a lovely man. And, I think that might surprise people when you see Agro and all his naughtiness. My sense of Jamie was that he was a lovely man. But, there was a bit of fatigue during the interview. And if you're watching it near the end, he put Agro on, but then he's resting his head on Agro because he's getting a little bit tired. And I remember thinking at that point, I started wrapping up because I thought, this is, okay, he's getting older, but I don't think anyone expected this. And in actual fact, he had been working on a one-off special with Channel 7, and I've got a few details about that for Media McKnight, but let's just say that's on Tuesday, but let's just say this special would have introduced us to Agro's father and son. So that was being worked on. Yeah. And so I think there's that special is really sad that we will never see it. And, I just wish he could have lived long enough to have that as his final tribute to Agro.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the coverage during the week, and I agree with you. Hopefully it's more national than it has been. I know it was big in the news down here. It wasn't lead story, obviously, because there's plenty of things going on in the world at the moment, but it's encouraging to know that he is, I think, proud of his Queenslander. He's a Brisbane boy, but, he was a national identity, a national figure, and in the same way this week when we lost Dennis Cometti, he was a Perth figure, but at the end of the day, he was a national figure, and these people soundtrack our early lives for most of us who are younger than him. They'd sort of soundtrack our childhoods, and I think it's important to keep that tribute going. Hey, Rob.
What's also,
Go
sorry, I
on,
was
you go.
just going to say what's also interesting about that interview is he talks about getting sacked by B105 when he was
Oh,
number
yeah.
one, and it was interesting last night on Channel 7. Their reports said he resigned and showed the press conference, and I'm there thinking, you obviously didn't watch the McKnight Tonight interview because he goes into
He
great
was
detail
sacked.
about how they took
Yeah.
him to a coffee shop and said, we've got a press conference, you're announcing your resignation, and he just went, no, I'm not. I'm going to wail and cry if you force me to do that. You've got to give me time to set something else up so it looks like I'm going to something. And so they capitulated to that. And why radio executives, and Wade, I only discovered radio when I moved up to Gold Coast and started working at 4BC. I love radio. It's a fantastic medium. But some of the decisions being made in radio are just bizarre. Why executives think it's okay to get rid of someone who is number one, and we've seen that recently too.
Oh, Ash Bradnam.
It just that's exactly who's popping into my head. I just don't understand the decisions being made sometimes, and the executives think they are bigger than the personalities that people fall in love with.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you kill a number one show at your peril, or
Correct.
Cancel a show at its peril. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us. So, McKnight Tonight on Tuesday, you've got some more details in that episode, and people can go through to your YouTube channel. I'd encourage everyone to do it. I think having a kind of like a first-person memory when you know someone's passed, and as we said, it's only a couple of months ago. It's probably his last interview. We think it probably is his last interview. So there's
I
plenty.
think it is, but I don't know.
Well, and also just you put that lovely image in our heads, even if we haven't seen it yet, of him resting his head on Agro. And so even just some of the still images you saw on social media yesterday of just, Agro almost alone. And then there's pictures of it's such a symbiotic relationship of his personality and character. And I think we mourn Agro as much as we mourn Jamie as well.
Yeah, we certainly do. And it's interesting, in the TV Black Box article I did, I said we lost two icons, Jamie and Agro, because you can't have one without the other. I know that there was another gentleman who started Agro, but that didn't work, and that person didn't turn him into the icon that we know.
That's right. The lamb ad icon, as he was so proud to show in there. Hey, Rob, thanks so much. And people can find you on McKnight Tonight on YouTube.
Thanks, mate.
See you, Rob. That's Rob McKnight there. Now let's talk more radio stuff, because I know many people work with him in radio, and I probably knew of him in radio, but didn't, as I said, work with him, but knew his style. But also, I think it's important to talk to people who loved him as a listener and then ended up having a personal connection or relationship. So if you've got any stories, please drop them in the chat. I know many people are watching this on YouTube as well. But I'm going to bring in Liam Renton now. Liam is a mate of mine, and Liam is another Brisbane icon. Are you happy with that intro, Liam?
Is that what I wrote for you?
I think I'm channeling a little bit of Jamie this morning, just kind of that cheeky kind of, stir the pot sort of thing. Hey, so your connection with Jamie, so you're a listener first, right?
Yeah, well, hearing the news yesterday, it took me straight back to my childhood. Boris's Breakfast Club, Wombat, Agro's Cartoon Connection, and then just the juggernaut that was B105 in the 90s. It was the only radio station the whole city listened to. He owned Brisbane. He absolutely owned Brisbane, and he was loved and adored by this city.
Yeah. Can you remember the moment you first met him?
Yeah, and I had an amazing apprenticeship. It was my first real Cap City job. I was 19 years of age. And just for the radio nerds, let me run you through what B105 was like when I started working with him 30 years ago this year. So it was 1996. It was Jamie Dunn, it was Ian Skippon, and Robin Bailey on Breakfast.
Of course. Yep.
An amazing show. Across the day, we had the GOAT. Jamie Angel was on mornings. And in the afternoons, we had a rotation. It was Paul Davies, who's an absolute icon up here, Dean Kesby and Campo. And then we had this guy called Brendan Jones on late nights. Jonesy from Gold was on late nights. Osher was part of the street team. You were just surrounded by giants. Yep. It was an unbelievable time. And so for me, at 19 years of age, being pulled onto the morning crew as his very junior traffic reporter, I just thought it was normal that we rated 33%. Okay, 33. Is that good?
Sure. Is that good?
I thought it was the norm. And
yeah, keep going.
And I just remember, budgets of millions of dollars, like no expense spared. And we were all about the entertainment. How can we entertain this city? And Jamie just led that.
Yeah, he was. And, I know he did a lot of work for charity too, which I want to talk about. But in terms of radio nerd stuff, because we know that's who's watching and listening to this. So you meet him does the impression of him as a person match the person that you were listening to on the radio?
Well, you've got to get your head around the fact that there's a voice that you recognise from the TV coming out of a very beautiful balding man's mouth. Jamie? It's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
But the warmth, he's the first to walk over to you and shake your hand. Doesn't matter who you were. He'd just walk over, "G'day, I'm Jamie," and shake your hand. Would say hi to everyone. Wasn't hiding in the corner. Wasn't shy. Would drag you in to the conversation. Would drag you into the moment. Even if there was a team meeting, what do you reckon? And you'd just be a part of it regardless. He was very warm, very welcoming. It was amazing.
I did read somewhere, I think it might have been someone who did mid-dawns at B105, said he used to come and eat his breakfast in the studio with the person doing mid-dawns just to have a chat before he went on air. I mean,
I saw that. That was Kieran Atkinson. So Kieran Atkinson did mid-dawns a couple of seasons before me, and I had the exact same experience. So Jamie would go and have breakfast with Kieran every morning. And Jamie, I'd be in there at 4 a.m. Jamie was either first or second in. It was either him or Michael Price, the producer, first ones in. And Jamie would come in and say hi. How was your night?
Yep.
What do you play on the 2 o'clock 2-ups? Like, he would genuinely come and say hello every single morning. He didn't have to. He had his own show to do. He had production to make, but he made the time every day.
Beautiful. Now, Liam, I asked you to have a think about some things you've learned from Jamie, just in terms of your life and radio. How about you share some of those with us now?
I wrote down my top 6. So as his...
Well, good, because it's like we've got 13 minutes to go. So, I mean, did Jamie teach you anything about timing? Drag it out, yeah. That's probably what he taught you. He
taught me everything about radio, and most of it was just having a front row seat. So reading his traffic report for a couple of years, there wasn't a lot of traffic going on in the 90s. So you just got and sat to listen to the whole show. I basically had checked every show, every day. For years, you would just sit and listen, and you'd hear when he'd repeat stuff, and you'd hear when the first gag would work, and he'd do it again 2 hours later. And there might be a slight tweak on it or a slight change, or there was an addition. So you just had this amazing baptism as to how to do radio. So I'll give you my top 6 of the things that I personally learnt from Jamie Dunn. Okay. Number 1's work ethic. Get in early and be prepared. He was always first or second in. He was in hours early, and he always had a little satchel bag full of notes and ideas. He was just working on content.
He used to write down his ideas like
handwritten.
Yep. Wow.
Pages of notes. Like the old Seinfeld yellow notepad. He'd have his own notepad and just have pages of notes. So he was always content-driven, always prepped. The big one was showbiz for me. So I put showbiz as point number 2. Every break, every bit, every segment, every comp needed staging. It needed an intro. It needed a sound effect. It needed a jingle. If he didn't have a jingle, he'd crack out the guitar that was in the corner of the studio and he'd sing one live. So he had staging for everything. And
so the sound was important, like the theatre of it.
Absolute radio theatre, absolutely. So he would lift an everyday chat about bread into singing a song about bread or singing a bread song. So showbiz was really important.
Yep.
The golden rule, number 3, make them laugh. It was always about the laughter.
Definitely. Yep.
But there was a twist to the golden rule. If you can't make them laugh, make them cry. So you make them laugh, or you make them cry. And I think Jamie secretly knew that making them cry was actually better, because the person would remember it more and the listeners would remember it more. The amount of times we had sick kids on the radio that Jamie was helping, Brisbane listeners would know a long time friend of his of the show called Blake, who was very sick, and Jamie had sent a helicopter to his house and taken him to Dreamworld for the day, and you'd just be in tears. So he knew that if he couldn't make them laugh, he'd make them cry.
Yep.
Number 4, get creative. I'll never forget when I was doing some stunt work for the crew, and we had to launch Icebreak Coffee in Brisbane. And Jamie goes to me, I want you to go to a park. I want you to find 10 guys. I want you to strip them down to their jocks, and I want you to get them to run around the oval for the whole 3 hours of the show. Okay? He said, and every time they take a break, put some ice down the front of their pants.
Oh, God.
What? So every time they took an ice break, they would be getting ice down the front of their togs. And I'm like, you want me to put a handful of ice down a grown man's jocks? He said, yeah. And so we were promoting Ice Break. It was super creative. And at the end of the day, some guy got $1,000 cash. Like I had $1,000 cash tucked in my black thunder pocket, in my jacket. Wow. There you go, $1,000.
Those are the days.
So that was creative. You know, he came off that on the spot.
Yep.
This one's a good one. I love this one. The long game, including long story arcs. So long before Jimmy Kimmel had an ongoing feud with Matt Damon, Jamie Dunn had a very long ongoing feud with John Farnham.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because apparently he was in Farnham's band and Farnham kicked him out. And Farnham was big in 96, 97. So every time we
Yeah.
played a Farnham song, Jamie would yell and scream and get that off and why are we playing that loser and I hate John Farnham. And so this feud was going back and forth for years. And then the big build up when John Farnham was contractually required to come into the studio because of his album. And then Farnham comes to town and I'm tasked with the job of taking about 10 sick kids to a behind the scenes personal meet and greet with John Farnham that Jamie had organised. And I was like, there's no feud. Hang on
No
a second.
actual feud.
These guys are mates. And just the wall, the blinkers came off. And all of a sudden I'm like, bingo, you had me. Show
True
business.
performer. Yeah.
And
showbiz.
that just went on for years, that feud. And there might have been a bit of angst at the start, but they were professionals and they both got it.
Yep.
And the main point, be kind. Kindness costs you nothing. He loved sick kids. He loved battlers. When he was off Broadway, he'd done his time B105. He'd been to most stations. He was on a community station for a long time here in Brisbane, which people mightn't have known about. And he had a sick kid that used to ring him at 5:05 every morning.
Really?
Every single morning. And I was in the car driving every morning. And he started his show with this sick kid every single day. Now, was it great radio? Was it engaging? Jamie made it engaging. Who did it service? The kid. It made the kid feel great.
Yeah.
It was in a time slot
Beautiful.
that didn't matter. And he gave it to the kid. And it wasn't just once or twice, Wade. It was every single day he had this kid on. How was your night, Nick? What are you doing today? When are we going to catch up next? Kindness.
Beautiful. Kindness. Mate, thank you for preparing that. That was lovely. And I've known you for a long time, and I know that we'd laugh and joke about some of the radio show business, the showbiz sort of arseholes that exist. Thankfully, neither of us are those two. But when you find someone who's kind in the industry, who's kind to listeners, importantly, and kind to people on the up, not just because they can get something out of them, but encourage them, but just kind as they go about their work, I think that's really special. And I want to thank you.
I'll give you an
for being
example.
kind
So
and doing
Jamie
that
would
too.
often have morning crew lunches. They'd go out for lunch. And I had my very small role on that show, right? And Jamie would say, "You're coming to lunch?" Me? So I was surprised to get an invite. I was even more surprised that he would pay. I was like, oh, that was kindness. One radio nerds in Brisbane would know. There was a legendary listener called Bike Boy, who was this kid that used to ride to every single outside broadcast we ever did. So he didn't have a car. He didn't have a license. And sometimes he would ride 30 or 40 kilometres live. And so we'd always say, hey, Bike Boy, we'd know him as Bike Boy. He'd follow us everywhere. And one day, Bike Boy had his bike stolen and he walked to an OB. So he walked to this OB. Oh, God. And I remember Jamie pulling money out of his pocket and going, "You're getting a new bike," and just bought him a new bike on the spot at an OB. I remember going, wow, like
beautiful.
Who carries that much money around? But he just had the money in his wallet and gave it to him there and then.
That's awesome. Thanks, mate. Appreciate you coming on today.
Anytime.
Liam Renton there, mate of mine, but also a Brisbane boy at heart, growing up as a listener and then working with Jamie. I'm really pleased to say I've got Brendan Wood on the line. Brendan, where are you right now? Tell us where you are.
Wait there, one tick. For some reason, I've lost audio. I'm just going to take the on out. That's all right. There we go. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yeah. Where are you?
I can see your lips moving, but unfortunately, I can't hear the audio. But I'll just come off the back of what was just said just then by Liam. So the John Farnham, part 2 of the John Farnham story. John Farnham actually did a phone interview with the B105 Morning Crew. I arrived in about 1998, and in the years prior to that, so maybe around 96, Donna Lynch went back through the old telecom call-out phone numbers from the B105 studio and discovered the old John Farnham home phone number. She phoned him on his home phone number for an interview one day. It was recorded, and he just went off, apparently, and said, "Do not call this number ever again." And that was one of the many John Farnham stories. There was another story, too, about Tina Arena, where the B105 Morning Crew was sitting around prior to my arrival, and they'd been waiting for like an hour for this interview to come out of Sydney. It was after they come off air one day at about 10 a.m. or something. And eventually when she arrived, they heard down the landline, the ISDN line. She goes, "Oh, geez, such a busy morning. I'm off for a break." She wanted a cup of coffee or something. And that was it. So you had on the blacklist, never to be interviewed, was John Farnham and Tina Arena. So when I arrived in 1998, I was aware of those two people that never would be interviewed. Now, because I can't hear audio, I hope you don't mind, Wade. I'm just going to talk through a couple of things here, and I apologise about that. And I don't know why I'm not hearing it. Anyway, I just hit another button there. Maybe something might change.
Okay.
So when I arrived to work with Jamie, I was aware of how big the show was. It was rating in the early 30s. It was a massive show. Robin Bailey was on the show with Ian Skippen. And I specifically remember I was hired as a trial in late 1998. And I remember one day Jamie coming into the second studio, which is where the producers sat at the Bowen Hills complex. And he said, "Brendan, can you phone this person and tell them we'll call them tomorrow," or something about a gotcha call or whatever it was. And I did that. And I remember when I hung up on the phone, he goes, "You're a good boy, Brendy." He used to always call me Brendy. And I knew I had the job then because he liked that I had manners and I looked after people. And like what you were saying with Liam earlier on, it is all about, for Jamie anyway, about being nice. He didn't like people who had huge egos. He stayed away from them. And he was always encouraging people, to do well on radio or TV. If they had, if they were good people. I know Laurel Edwards spoke in her Facebook and Instagram post yesterday about how she was, in her teenage years, and Jamie thought she was a great performer, a singer, and put her on the local telethon in Brisbane. And just to what you were talking earlier on with Liam and Rob, Jamie, I saw there was a figure floated around yesterday, which I think would be true. $25 million was raised for local children's hospitals in Brisbane. And that was all off the back of the effort of Jamie Dunn. And just another thing I just want to point out as well, I had a few little notes here, and it's just weird that I'm not getting any questions, but I'll do a Kevin Rudd and just answer my own questions. But Kyle Sandilands, in about 2000, Jamie Dunn called me and said, Kyle Sandilands, who at the time was the kind of rising star in Austereo. He'd come from Hot 100 in Darwin. He went to Triple M in Brisbane and did the morning show with somebody else, a female co-host. Anyway, went to Sydney for a trial with Jackie O. And in those early days when they were doing the Hot 30 Countdown, Jamie rang me and said, "Kyle Sandilands will be coming into the studio tomorrow morning. Here's his phone number. Can you enable his arrival to the B105 morning crew?" Kyle arrived about 7 in the morning and left, soon after 9 o'clock. But Kyle was a massive fan of the brash nature and the broadcasting nature that Jamie had. And he sat there asking a lot of questions about how Jamie, performed, the preparation he did do or he didn't do. Spoke to Jamie a lot during the songs. And I think, I know Kyle's been in the news over the past week, but I would suggest that Kyle is also, deeply upset about what has occurred, in the last 24 hours. Some other items here I wrote down, this is just a behind the scenes story. Randomly, while I was working with him at B105, I was only there for just under 4 years. He bought me a 40O, Radio 40O sign, which I don't know how he grabbed it. I think he grabbed it in a Brisbane op shop or, antique shop. And he said, "Here we go, Brendy, happy birthday. You can have this." And it said more about his passion for radio. And his interest and deep interest in radio stations and radio brands throughout Queensland. And the other thing too, he was a radio nerd. He would jump into the car at 9 o'clock 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning and listen to the John Laws morning show, which is being broadcast on 4BC. And he loved things like John Laws watches being given away. So whenever we were giving away B105 morning crew items, it was always the B105 morning crew, blah, blah, blah. But look, it's a very sad day yesterday to hear about Jamie's passing. Obviously we all think it was way too early. And I feel sorry for, many of his family and friends after what happened yesterday. And because I can't hear you, Wade, I apologise about this. I hope I've been able to contribute to your podcast and YouTube stream.
Thanks, Brendan. I'll just put you backstage and hopefully that changes the audio a bit for you. You might be able to hear us, but if you don't, you can watch it on catch up. But thank you. They were great stories. And yeah, the radio nerds, we need to kind of keep that dream alive, right? That's not a John Laws pun, by the way. We need to keep the dream alive of people who really, really love radio. And I did reach out to Bruno, Kyle's manager, last night just to see if he had anything to say. Obviously, he will, I think, in due course, but with lots going on there that he probably won't at the moment. But I could imagine he's really hurting with that news as well, because we've all got them, those people that got us into the business somehow. As a listener, we kind of were brought in by something about them, the cheekiness, the dangerous personality, the raw, the rude, the funny, whatever it was. We kind of got into the biz usually from a person, not just because we love listening to music. Okay, that's been our Jamie Dunn tribute for today. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. If you want to add any comments to our social media feed, just find us at the Quarter Hour Podcast, and I'll be happy to share some of those as well throughout the day and throughout the week. But thank you for joining us. I want to thank Rob for coming on and his preparation, Liam for his preparation, especially in coming on, and Brendan, even though he couldn't hear us, did an admirable job, as anyone on radio can do when there's an audio issue, but I've got to keep going. And Brendan was in Thailand and wanted to join in and add a tribute too. And there's some lovely things you can see on Facebook. Thanks for joining us today. I'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode, spending an anniversary, a significant anniversary in the radio industry. So that's tomorrow on the Quarter Hour. But for now, dear listener, Valet Jamie Dunn, and see you later.